Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're really plunging headfirst into something that, when you stop and think about it, is one of the most, well, frankly, baffling financial paradoxes out there.
Hmm.
I'm talking about bottled water. Just, think about it for a second. It's essential, right, for life. It flows practically free from our taps.
Right into our homes, treated,
Yeah,
tested.
exactly, endlessly available. And yet somehow, through this, I don't know, marketing alchemy, we've been convinced to pay these astronomical prices for it.
Yeah, sometimes up to, what, 2,000 times more?
2,000 times more than the water from the tap. It's nuts.
Right.
So how did we get here? How did this entire industry basically master consumer psychology so well that they turned a human right, this abundant resource, into a multi-billion-dollar business?
It's a huge question.
That's the mystery, right? That's what we're trying to unravel today. And
Yeah.
I think we're going to uncover some pretty surprising stuff about how they've reshaped, our habits, our perceptions, and definitely our wallets.
Oh, absolutely. And when you start to really dig into the sheer scale of it, it's just, well, it's genuinely staggering. In 2022 alone, just in the U.S., people spent, get this, $20.8 billion on bottled water.
Billion with a B.
With a B, yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, that markup is insane. Often 1,000, maybe 2,000 times what tap water costs. Or think of it per gallon, about 300 times more.
How is that even possible? How does that become normal?
Well, it happens because these companies are incredibly good at, well, identifying and maybe more importantly, exploiting our sort of psychological weak spots.
Like when you're thirsty
Yeah.
or just need something quick.
Exactly. Those moments, sudden thirst, you're on the go, need convenience. Or maybe you're thinking about health, trying to be healthier. In those specific moments, we make these buying decisions that, honestly, if we just stopped and thought about them for a minute, would seem completely laughable.
Yeah, that's kind of the aha moment for a lot of people, isn't it? Myself included. You find out that a huge chunk of that expensive bottled water, what was it, like 25%?
Around 25%, yeah, according to
Right.
groups like the Natural Resources Defense Council.
Right. It's just repackaged tap water.
Hmm.
Let that sink in. We're paying like hundreds, maybe thousands of times more for the same stuff that's already treated, regulated, and flows into our homes for pennies.
It totally flips your perspective.
It really does.
And it's so easy at first to think, oh, well, that must be just a few bad apples. A couple of dodgy brands cutting corners.
Right. That's what I thought initially.
But the reality is just, it's so much bigger. This isn't some small niche thing. It's a massive $300 billion global industry.
300 billion. Wow.
And what's really wild and kind of disturbing when you think about it is that it's pretty much built entirely on manufacturing demand, creating a need for something that, like you said, is already provided, treated, regulated right to our homes.
They created a market for something we already have.
Exactly. Engineered scarcity from abundance. It's quite something.
Okay, but what about safety? That's the big one, right? People think, well, at least it's safer. It must be purer if I'm paying this much.
Yeah. Well, here's another piece of the puzzle, and it's pretty unsettling. A study found something like 45% of bottled water brands have actually failed quality tests at least once.
Failed. How badly?
Well, we're not talking small things. They found contaminants like bacteria, arsenic, even industrial chemicals in some cases.
Arsenic. Seriously.
Seriously. So the idea that it's automatically purer or safer, it just doesn't always hold up.
So often not pure, often not safer, and definitely not cheaper.
Pretty much sums it up.
Which brings us right back to that main question. How did we get here? How did paying for water in a bottle become normal everywhere?
Yeah, let's dig into that.
So really, how did corporations manage to convince us, collectively to buy something we already have for basically nothing?
Well, the answer seems to lie in what has to be one of the most brilliant, maybe audacious marketing transformations like ever.
It wasn't just selling a product, was it?
No, not at all. It fundamentally reshaped how we think about water, how we interact with it daily. It changed our perception of a basic need.
So where did it start?
You really have to go back in time. Think about America before, say, the 1970s.
Okay.
Back then, the whole idea of paying for bottled water, it would have seemed absurd, just ridiculous. Water was a public utility.
Right, like electricity or roads.
Exactly. A basic public good. An entitlement, almost. Not something you'd, browse for in the supermarket
A
aisle.
water aisle would have seemed crazy.
Completely alien. You got water from the tap, a drinking fountain, maybe a hose in the summer. That was it.
And then something changed.
Then came Perrier. that iconic green bottle.
Ah, yes, the green bottle.
1977. They launched this massive campaign in the U.S., and it was pure marketing genius.
How
They
so?
didn't sell it as just water. They positioned it as this sophisticated European alternative to alcohol.
Alternate to alcohol. That's clever.
Very clever. It wasn't about quenching thirst. It was about making a statement. Lifestyle elegance, health consciousness, that European chic.
So it became aspirational.
Totally. And that clever positioning gave bottled water its first real foothold in America by 1978. It basically opened the door for the whole industry.
Wow. It just reframed the whole idea of bottled water.
Completely. And once that seed was planted, consumption it exploded.
How much did it grow?
Well, think about this. In 1978, Americans drank about 1.6 gallons per person per year.
Okay, not much.
Tiny. By 2022, it had jumped to a staggering 47.9 gallons per person.
Whoa! That's a huge leap.
It's massive. And think about PepsiCo launching Aquafina in 1994. Big players getting in.
Right.
And then later, in 2007, they admitted Aquafina came from public water sources.
So tap water again?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Filtered tap water. So it wasn't just niche anymore. It's going mainstream fast. The floodgates were open.
And wasn't there a point where it actually outsold soda?
Yes. That was a huge milestone. 2016. For the first time ever in the U.S., bottled water sales overtook carbonated soft drinks. They sold 12.8 billion gallons.
12.8 billion gallons.
It showed the shift was complete. Every major beverage company saw the potential, jumped in. They realized they'd struck gold.
So the manufactured demand really took hold.
Absolutely. And that's the core insight they found, right? The big revelation: get the marketing right, tell the right story, and people will pay premium prices for the most abundant thing on earth.
It sounds almost unbelievable when you just say it like that.
I know. There was this one executive who apparently told shareholders, quite bluntly, the beauty of the water business is that it's all margin.
All margin, because the raw material is basically free.
Pretty much. It's
Yeah.
like they figured out how to monetize air, but with water.
And those margins really tell the story, don't they? What are we talking about?
Okay, so bottled water, typically you're looking at profit margins of around 30 to 35%.
30 to 35. Okay, compare that.
Right, think about soda. Lots of ingredients, complex process. That's maybe 10 to 15% margin.
Okay.
Juice, maybe 50 to 20%. Milk, a staple food, like 5 to 10%.
Wow. So water, the simplest thing, brings the highest profit.
By far. It's
Well-
kind of mind-boggling. The value isn't in the liquid. It's in the bottle, the brand, the marketing.
That disparity says it all.
Precisely. This is what Dr. Peter Gleich, he's a well-known water expert, calls the perfect storm of manufactured demand.
Manufactured demand.
Yeah. He argues they didn't just sell a product. They actually engineered our psychology with surgical precision. They took this nearly free public good
Something we all had access to.
and transformed it through relentless marketing, sometimes deceptive marketing, into this desirable, almost luxury item.
Creating the desire, the perceived need.
Exactly. Making you want to buy something you fundamentally don't need to buy. You already have it. And that engineered desire, that systematic undermining of public trust in tap water, that really sets the stage for their most profitable tactic,
Which is,
convincing us it's healthier and safer.
right, that illusion of purity. Because nowhere is that psychological engineering clearer or, frankly, more profitable than how they've managed to convince us bottled water is just inherently better, healthier, safer than tap.
It's a masterclass in managing perception, built on suggestion, playing on anxiety.
How do they do it?
Well, think about that question they often plant in your mind. What's in your water?
Yeah, you hear that sometimes. Sounds reasonable.
It sounds helpful, right?
Right.
Maybe even caring.
Huh.
But the strategy behind it is pretty insidious. It's designed to sow these little seeds of doubt, maybe even distrust, about the water that's readily available from your tap.
Okay, I see. Make you question the default.
Exactly. And at the same time, it positions their product, the bottle, as the pure, safe, unimpeachable alternative. It's classic misdirection.
Focus on the bottle, ignore the source.
You got it. And here's the critical bit they really don't want you to know.
What's that?
Bottled water, in many important ways, is actually less regulated than tap water.
Less regulated? Really? I thought it would be the opposite.
Most people do. But it operates under different rules. Often fewer tests required, sometimes less strict limits for certain things, longer times between inspections. It's a fundamental difference most consumers are totally unaware of.
Wow. Okay, that's huge.
It is. It's the Achilles heel of their whole purity claim, and they guard that fact fiercely. Let's break it down a bit.
Please.
Okay, so municipal water, your tap water, right?
Yeah.
That's regulated by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency.
Right. Strict rules.
Very strict. They mandate testing for over 90 contaminants. And crucially, your local water utility has to tell you the results, usually in an annual report. Transparency.
Okay, makes sense.
Now, bottled water. That falls into the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. It's treated mostly like a food product.
Different agency, different rules.
Yeah, exactly. While the FDA rules are often based on EPA standards, they generally require less frequent testing. And here's the kicker. An estimated 60 to 70% of the bottled water sold in the U.S. specifically, water that's bottled and sold within the same state, so it doesn't cross state lines.
Yeah.
It's completely exempt from FDA oversight.
Completely exempt. So who regulates it?
Often, just the state and the rules vary wildly. Or sometimes it's basically self-regulated by the company itself.
So a huge chunk of the market has very little independent oversight.
A huge chunk. It's a massive regulatory loophole.
Okay, so despite all the marketing about purity, the reality on regulation is complicated. What about taste? Can people even tell the difference?
That's another fascinating part. There was a study, I think back in 2010, in the Journal of Sensory Studies. They did blind taste tests.
Okay, so people didn't know what they were drinking.
Right. And guess what? Generally, people could not reliably tell the difference between bottled water and tap water.
So it's all in our heads because of the branding.
Pretty much. Our brains are convinced it's better because of the fancy bottle, the cool label, the ads we've seen. Not because of the actual taste or quality for most people. It just shows the power of suggestion.
The power of marketing.
Absolutely. Which brings us to their playbook. I read about a former marketing director for a big brand.
Yeah.
She said they were basically directed to use images of, mountains, glaciers, pristine lakes, regardless of where the water actually came from.
Regardless of where the water actually came from.
Regardless, even if it was from, like, a factory.
She told a story about one brand with this beautiful snowy mountain on the label, the water source. A municipal supply in suburban New Jersey.
No way. So it's just an illusion.
Total illusion. Selling an aesthetic of untouched nature, even if the reality is completely different. They're selling a fantasy.
And the language they use, words like purified, pristine.
Oh, yeah, that's chosen very carefully. Those words create what lawyers call implied health benefits.
Implied benefits.
Meaning they suggest it's better for you, healthier, cleaner, without making a direct claim they'd have to prove scientifically. Clever. Sounds good, but they don't have to back it up.
Exactly. It's a very fine line they walk. Manipulating perception without getting sued.
So it's like hydrological fiction, creating a story.
That's a great term for it. Hydrological fiction. Crafting these elaborate romantic origin stories for water that's often just processed municipal water.
Making tap water sound exotic.
Pretty much. There was even a leaked internal memo from one company that basically said, consumers pay for the story, not the source.
Wow. That's blunt.
Tells you everything, doesn't it? It's not about the water itself. It's about selling the narrative.
Okay, so they manipulate psychology, stretch the truth on purity. What about the environment? Because plastic bottles, that's a huge issue.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets maybe the most insidious. Their environmental virtue signaling.
Virtue signaling.
Yeah, they spend huge amounts of money positioning themselves as eco-champions, leaders in sustainability.
You see that, right? Our bottles are lighter. We support recycling.
Exactly. They frame themselves as part of the solution, all while their core business model is creating one of the biggest, most persistent pollution problems on the planet.
The disconnect is huge.
It's stunning, really. They make these grand claims. Our bottles use 30% less plastic now.
Okay. Less plastic is good, I guess.
Maybe slightly better. But let's look at the reality. The industry turns out about 500 billion plastic bottles every single year, globally.
500 billion, that's hard to even imagine.
For this, lay them end to end, they'd circle the Earth 127 times every year.
Oh my God, the sheer volume.
It's a plastic avalanche.
Yeah.
And here's the really devastating part that just shreds their green image.
What's that?
The vast majority of those bottles, they never get recycled.
Never, but they push recycling so hard.
They do, but the system can't handle it.
Yeah.
The EPA data, I think for 2018 in the U.S., showed only about 29.1% of PET bottles and jars were actually recycled.
So less than a third. Where does the rest go?
Landfills, oceans, rivers, landscapes. Billions and billions of bottles piling up, choking ecosystems. The production just dwarfs the recycling capacity.
That's depressing. And it's not just the waste, right? What about making the bottles?
Good point. That's another huge hidden cost. A 2009 study by the Pacific Institute found producing bottled water takes up to 2,000 times more energy than producing tap water.
2,000 times the energy for water.
Yeah. Think about the fossil fuels burned, the carbon emissions,
Yeah.
all for something readily available through existing pipes. That same study estimated that making the bottles just for the U.S. market needs the equivalent of 17 million barrels of oil a year.
17 million barrels of oil just for the plastic bottle.
Just for the bottles, it's an enormous, unnecessary drain on resources.
And doesn't making bottled water use a lot of water?
Yes, the irony is deep there. Research shows the whole process, making the plastic, filling, transport, can use 1.5 to 2 times the amount of water that's actually in the final bottle.
Wait, so to get 1 liter of bottled water, you might use up to 2 extra liters of water.
In the whole production chain, yeah. It's incredibly inefficient, using more water to deliver water.
That's just wow. So this environmental doublespeak term makes sense.
Right. Dr. Sherry Mason, she's a microplastics researcher, uses that term. She says these companies have mastered the art of making you feel good about buying their product, making you think they're eco-friendly.
While creating this massive pollution problem.
Precisely. It's a calculated strategy. Manipulate perception, soothe consumer guilt, keep the profits rolling.
And those eco-innovations like lighter bottles, is that really about the planet?
Well, it helps the planet a tiny bit, maybe. But let's be honest, the main motivation seems pretty clear. Lightweighting bottles saves the companies millions in plastic costs and transportation. Promoting recycling improves their image.
So it helps their bottom line and their PR.
Exactly. There was a quote from a former packaging executive who said, off the record, something like, "Lightweighting saved us millions and let us claim environmental leadership. Win-win for us, lose-lose for the planet."
Oof, that's pretty cynical.
Stark, isn't it? Shows where the priorities really lie.
Okay, so the environmental angle is grim. But you mentioned exploitation goes deeper. What about the communities where they get the water?
Yeah. That's another whole layer. Because the impact isn't just global pollution. It's often very direct, very local, and sometimes devastating for the communities where these big bottling plants operate.
How does that work? What's the setup?
Well, you know the pitch they give, right? They come into these often rural, maybe economically struggling areas.
Promising jobs and investment.
Exactly. Jobs, economic development, a boost for the town. They present themselves as saviors bringing opportunity. Sounds good on paper, but the reality on the ground can be really different. While the company is hauling away millions of gallons of local groundwater, often paying next to nothing for it.
Like how little?
Sometimes just tiny permit fees, pennies per 1,000 gallons, literally. While they do that, local groundwater levels can start dropping.
So local wells might run dry.
Exactly. Wells dry up, streams shrink, ecosystems get stressed, the community is left with less water, a damaged environment, and often very few of those promised long-term jobs.
While the company makes millions selling their water elsewhere.
Precisely. It's a hugely lopsided deal.
Are there specific examples of this?
Oh, plenty. Look at Nestle in Michigan. For years, they paid just $200 a year for a permit to pump up to 576,000 gallons a day.
$200 for potentially 400 million gallons a year.
Yep, water they sell for over $300 million. The math is just staggering. Or Nestle in California, pumping millions of gallons during a historic drought using permits that were decades expired.
During a drought, that's bold.
Unbelievable. Then there was a case near Crystal Springs Reservoir, where a company took 50 million gallons a year while nearby residents had strict water rationing.
Ouch, the irony.
And maybe the most famous fight was in Fryeburg, Maine. Residents fought Poland Spring for 25 years because their wells went dry and streams got low after the pumping started.
25 years? Did they win?
Ultimately, no. The company secured the rights to pump 1 billion gallons over 45 years.
1 billion gallons, despite the local impact.
It shows the power imbalance. These aren't isolated cases, it's a pattern.
There's a term for this, right? Resource colonization.
Exactly. Dr. Robert Johnson uses that term, extracting a vital resource, often for free or close to it, from vulnerable communities, shipping it away and selling it for huge markups elsewhere.
The community bears the cost. The corporation gets the profit.
That's the model. It's modern resource extraction.
How do they get these deals?
They're very strategic. They target communities that are struggling economically, knowing they'll be more receptive to promises of jobs, even if it's only a few dozen jobs per plant, usually.
So dangle a few jobs to get massive water rights.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And they work fast. A former negotiator admitted they were told to push deals through before any potential water restrictions could be put in place, or before the community could really organize against it.
Get in before people realize what's happening.
Basically, yeah. Lock in the best possible extraction terms, prioritize the profit, worry about the consequences later, or never. It's preemptive.
Okay, this is a lot. Psychological games, environmental damage, community impacts. So where's the oversight? Who's supposed to be stopping this?
Ah, the million-dollar question. Or maybe the $300 billion question.
Who's protecting us?
And the disturbing answer points to maybe the industry's biggest advantage, this carefully crafted regulatory blind spot.
It's not an accident.
Doesn't seem like it. It seems deliberately shaped over time to let them operate with minimal scrutiny. They've carved out a loophole.
How does that compare to tap water regulation again?
Okay, so remember, 1974, Safe Drinking Water Act. Comprehensive, strict rules for public water systems, tap water. Testing, treatment, transparency, designed to protect public health.
Got it. Robust system.
But bottled water, it got shunted over to the FDA, treated like food. And that distinction means way fewer tests, less transparency, almost no rules about protecting the source of the water.
So tap water sources are protected, but bottled water sources, less so.
Much less so under federal rules. It's like comparing a highly audited public utility to a largely self-policing private industry. We assume they're equally safe, but the oversight is vastly different.
And this difference helps the bottled water industry.
Massively. It creates the perfect storm. They can sow doubt about tap water, which is heavily regulated and transparent, while they operate in relative shadows with far less oversight themselves.
It's a strategic advantage.
A huge one. And it's not by chance. This industry has serious lobbying power.
How much are we talking?
Well, the beverage industry overall, including bottled water interests, spent something like $22.4 million just on lobbying in D.C. in 2019 alone.
$22 million. That buys a lot of influence.
It certainly shapes legislation and keeps those regulatory advantages in place.
And we see the results, like outdated rules.
Definitely. The main FDA rules for bottled water haven't been significantly updated since 2009. A government report back in 2010 pointed out major gaps compared to EPA tap water rules. And state rules are all over the place. It's a patchwork.
So inconsistent protection at best.
Very inconsistent. And when cities or states try to regulate more strictly, the industry fights back hard.
Like in San Francisco with the plastic bottle ban.
Exactly. San Francisco tried to ban plastic water bottles on city property. The industry poured over $2 million into a campaign against it.
$2 million to fight a local ban. What was their argument?
Not health, not environment. It was all framed as consumer choice, protecting your freedom to buy water in plastic.
Ah, the freedom argument. Classic deflection.
Classic tactic. Turn a public good issue into a personal liberty issue. It's effective.
And does this lobbying actually affect enforcement when rules are broken?
It seems so. One investigation found that in states with heavy industry lobbying, reported water quality violations were almost 50% less likely to lead to fines or even public warnings.
So consumers might not even know if there was a problem.
Exactly. Kept in the dark. As one water rights lawyer put it, the industry lives in this carefully maintained gray area between food product and natural resource. It's a blind spot built and defended by lobbying.
And how much actual inspection happens?
Shockingly little. In 2019, the FDA apparently inspected only 27 of the 250-plus bottled water plants in the U.S.
27. Out of over 250, that's nothing.
Barely scratching the surface. A former regulator admitted they just don't have the resources or the authority to properly oversee it. Said most consumers would be shocked at how little verification actually happens.
The fox guarding the hen house?
Pretty much. Your trust is their main asset.
Okay, so the regulation is weak, but then the industry pivoted again, right? When people started catching on to the tap water thing and the environmental issues.
Exactly. They needed a new angle, especially for consumers willing to pay more. And that led to what might be their most, let's say, creative profit scheme yet.
Which is?
The ultra-premium pivot.
Ultra-premium water. Sounds fancy.
Oh, it is. Suddenly you see water marketed with these extraordinary claims. Not just pure, but harvested from ancient glaciers, or enhanced with rare minerals, or optimized for cellular hydration.
Cellular hydration? What does that even mean?
Exactly. Who knows? But it sounds impressive. They turned plain H2O into these $5–10 bottles of, well, liquid miracle
Wait,
cures,
bottled elixirs.
basically. And this segment became their fastest growing profit center. As people got wise to the issues with regular bottled water, the industry cleverly shifted focus to this ultra-premium category.
Where the perceived value is totally detached from the cost.
Completely, allowing even higher margins.
And their prices are nuts, right?
Absolutely wild. $5, $8, $10 a bottle is common. And the production cost. Studies suggest it's often under 10 cents.
10 cents, so the markup is thousands of percent.
Easily 5,000%, maybe 10,000%. Astronomical profit built entirely on perception.
Is this linked to that functional water trend? Alkaline electrolytes?
Big time. That market exploded, grew over 20% in just 5 years recently. Alkaline water, electrolyte water, hydrogen water, even water imprinted with sound waves.
Sound wave water? Seriously?
Apparently. It taps into this wellness anxiety, this idea that regular water isn't quite enough, that you need something extra.
This benefit inflation idea.
Perfect term. Convincing you water needs an upgrade to really work. Add some baking soda for alkalinity, some salt for electrolytes.
Things that cost virtually nothing.
Exactly. Or infuse it with hydrogen, or zap it with sound. Turning a basic commodity into this complex, high-tech, marketable health product, often with zero real science behind the claims.
Have people who worked on this stuff spoken out?
Yes. One former beverage developer admitted, pretty frankly, we'd add a pinch of minerals to standard filtered water, put it in a sleek bottle, charge 5 times more.
A pinch of minerals. Did it do anything?
He said zero measurable health benefit at those concentrations. It was pure marketing, pure optics, not science.
Wow. Just selling the story again?
Always selling the story. And sometimes the story is pure fiction. Remember Kona Deep?
Vaguely. What was their story?
Claimed their water was from deep ocean waters off Hawaii. Pristine, unique, full of deep-sea minerals. Sounds amazing, right?
Yeah, very exotic.
Turns out, while maybe the water source was offshore, the actual processing and bottling happened on the mainland. The whole Hawaii deep-sea thing was largely fabricated branding.
Total hydrological fiction.
The ultimate example, maybe. And across the board, these premium brands make claims better hydration, cellular optimization, detox, pH balance that are often scientifically impossible or just completely unproven.
Preying on people's desire for health.
Offering a quick, expensive fix in a bottle, selling a fantasy.
And it goes even further. Luxury water bars.
Oh yeah, that's the final frontier of absurdity, maybe. Place where you can get a water flight, taste of different bottled waters for maybe $50.
$50 for water.
Yep. Water, the cost of the bar, maybe $5 wholesale. Markups of 300%, 1,200%. It's water as pure status symbol.
Mind-blowing. Okay, so after digging into all this, the marketing, the deception, the environmental costs, the community impacts, the weak regulations, it feels kind of bleak, like the system is rigged.
It can definitely feel overwhelming. Like, what can one person even do?
Yeah. Is there anything we can do?
Absolutely. The encouraging thing is, the power really does lie with us, with you, the consumer. The answer is actually much simpler than you might think. Every choice makes a difference.
Okay, so what are the steps?
Well, first and foremost, embrace the tap. Seriously. Remember, U.S. tap water usually goes through way more safety testing than bottled water, like 100 times more.
It's regulated, it's tested, it's delivered to your home.
Exactly. Trust the system designed to protect public health. It's almost always the safer, more regulated choice.
But what if you don't like the taste? Or worry about chlorine or something?
Fair point. Then consider a filter. A simple tap filter or a pitcher filter costs maybe $30. It pays for itself in weeks compared to buying bottled water.
Improves taste, adds peace of mind, saves money.
Win-win-win. It's a small investment with a big payoff.
And the biggest impact? Probably reusable bottles.
Absolutely. That's maybe the single most powerful step. Get one good quality reusable bottle, stainless steel, glass, whatever you like, and just refill it.
Simple habit change.
Huge impact. Doing that keeps around 460 plastic bottles out of the environment every year, per person.
1,460 bottles.
Wow. And it saves you money, roughly $1,100 a year if you were buying bottled water regularly. It's a massive return, personally and for the planet. It's taking back control.
And it feels like things are shifting, doesn't it? You see campuses banning bottles, cities putting in refill stations.
There's definitely a growing rebellion, a move back towards seeing water as a public good. Forward-thinking colleges banning sales, cities installing cool, convenient refill stations. It feels like the beginning of the end for this totally manufactured market.
A market built on creating a need that didn't exist?
Exactly. It shows that collective awareness and consumer power can make a real difference.
It's a powerful shift.
It really is. It goes beyond just habits. Like one water expert, Maya Chen put it, water isn't just another product. It's a fundamental human right that got hijacked by corporate marketing.
Hijacked. Strong word, but feels accurate.
Reclaiming that right one refill at a time, one informed choice, it's not just about saving money or plastic. It's about reasserting what's truly essential.
So, as a final thought for everyone listening, maybe take a moment to consider the cumulative cost. Not just the money spent over the years on bottled water, but the environmental toll, too.
Mm-hmm.
What would things look like if this whole manufactured demand thing had never happened, if we hadn't bought into the illusion?
How different would our environment be, our communities?
And maybe more importantly now, looking forward, how much power do we actually have right now to reclaim water as that public good, free from the marketing hype?
Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.